Think about the last time you felt truly lonely. In the 21st century, it's an emotional inconvenience. A vague ache cured by a FaceTime call, a doom scrolling session, or ordering a pizza you don't need. You feel a little hollow, but you'll survive. But for 99% of human history, loneliness wasn't a mood. Loneliness was a predator. Loneliness was a biological death sentence. If you were alone in the Pleistocene, you weren't soul-searching. You weren't finding yourself. You were a calorie packet waiting to be collected by anything with larger teeth. No thick fur, no claws, no night vision. Our ancestors weren't physical titans. Their single, defining survival strategy was each other. So how did they deal with loneliness? They didn't cope with it. They engineered their entire existence, biology and psychology, to make being alone almost impossible. The methods they used were ruthless, deeply scientific, and genuinely unsettling. To understand their solution, you have to understand the threat. We often think of loneliness as sadness, but recent neurological research from MIT has mapped the brain of a lonely person, and it revealed something terrifying. In the ancient brain, social isolation triggered the exact same neural pathways as severe acute physical pain. It was an evolutionary early warning system. Pain tells you, stop touching that hot stove. Loneliness told our ancestors, get back to the group immediately, or you are dead. Prolonged isolation didn't just make them sad, it triggered a catastrophic cascade of stress hormones. Cortisol and adrenaline flooded the bloodstream. Blood pressure spiked. White blood cell production shifted to prepare for bacterial infection from an imminent predator attack. Their biology forced them to crave connection like a starving person craves food. To a Stone Age human, being lonely physically felt like bleeding. Their first line of defense wasn't just proximity, it was relentless physical contact. The modern concept of personal space would have been lethal. Before humans could even fully speak, they relied on a biological mechanism shared with other primates, social grooming. Evolutionary psychologists point out that the physical act of picking through hair or rubbing shoulders triggered massive, localized dumps of endorphins and oxytocin. It was literal chemical bonding. But as tribes grew larger, they didn't have enough hours in the day to physically touch everyone, so they engineered a vocal substitute: gossip. They used language to groom multiple people at once, creating an invisible, sticky web of social obligation that kept the tribe hyper-connected. But knowing you need to be together is different from surviving together in the dark. And this is where their methods become architectural. They didn't just stand near each other, they engineered the original social network, the controlled fire. Before fire, night was a terrifying isolation chamber. Humans are visually dominant. Taking away our sight instantly isolates us. After fire, night became prime time. The hearth created a literal ring of light, a geometric boundary separating the us from the terrifying them in the dark. A massive study published in PNAS analyzed the fireside conversations of modern hunter-gatherers. They found that daytime talk is purely transactional: economics, hunting, complaints. But 80% of night talk is storytelling. They didn't cope with loneliness, they erased it with shared mythology. Stories synced their brainwaves, their beliefs, and their values. It created a shared mental reality that bonded them even when they were physically miles apart the next day. This abstract connection was a force multiplier, creating a level of trust that allowed a small, weak tribe to operate as a single, lethal organism. But their most unsettling and effective method was purely physical. Forget the modern dream of a California King mattress, a quiet room, and 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. That is a biological anomaly that would have gotten you killed. Ancient humans practiced collective tactical sleep. Anthropologists at UC Berkeley studying indigenous sleeping patterns noted that solitary sleep is almost unheard of in non-industrial societies. Our ancestors slept in a huddle pile. They slept physically entangled. This maximized warmth and created a collective sensory net. If one person flinched at a sound, the kinetic energy transferred, and the whole group woke up instantly. This physical entanglement reinforced a profound, subconscious sense of security. Loneliness was physiologically impossible when you spent a third of your life physically merged with your entire community. Now, here is where their methods transcend the physical and become genuinely unsettling. Sometimes you had to be temporarily alone. Maybe you were a scout. Maybe you got separated during a hunt. This is where the engineering became brilliant. They hacked their own cognitive psychology. They invented a worldview where they were never truly alone. Evolutionary biologists call it the hyperactive agency detection device. It's the reason you see faces in the clouds or hear a voice in the static. Our ancestors cranked this cognitive bias up to 11. They didn't believe the forest was empty. They believed it was teeming with spirits. Animism. The tree wasn't just wood, it was an ancestor watching. The wind wasn't weather, it was a conversation. The mountain was awake, and it was judging you. This wasn't just primitive superstition, it was a psychological survival patch for the brain. By imbuing the environment with perceived agency, they bypassed the isolation panic response. If the whole world is a conversation, you are never the only one talking. They leveraged abstract thought to build a connection network that didn't require other humans to be present. The neurological panic button, the chemical bond of grooming, the tactical fireside story, the collective sleeping huddle, and the spiritual network of animism. These weren't optional cultural pastimes, they were the interlocking components of a mandatory complex defense system against the lethal threat of isolation. Today, when you feel lonely in your private apartment, safe behind 3 locked doors, staring at a screen, your ancient brain isn't just sad. It is screaming that you are separated from the pack and are about to be eaten. We have solved the external predator problem, but we have completely dismantled the ancient technologies that kept us connected. Our ancestors were never lonely because they couldn't afford to be.